Hello there and welcome. Lloyd Conant, co-founder of the Nightingale Conant Corporation in Chicago, was a very dear friend of mine while he was alive, and I hold very fond memories of him. He really helped me understand how to get the best out of myself. And one day in 1968, I was sitting in his kitchen, and I asked Lloyd, I said, Lloyd, how did you start this company? Because Lloyd Conant and Earl Nightingale didn't just start a company, they started an industry. The self-help industry as we know it today. It's the largest distribution house of self-help material in the world. And so I was sitting there, and Lloyd started to talk about a book he read. And he said, I studied this all weekend. It was called The Little Green Book. Well, all of a sudden, I wasn't interested in how he started the company. I wanted to know what this little green book was. See, I was into studying. I wanted to know, why did everything in the world happen the way it was happening? And he gave me a copy. It was called The Science of Getting Rich, and it was written by Wallace D. Wattles in 1903. It was, by the way, the book that inspired Rhonda Byrne to make that runaway hit movie, The Secret, that I was very fortunate enough to be in. And I began to study it. In chapter 14 in that book is something everyone should burn into their mind. It's leave every person you come in contact with the impression of increase. Now think about that. You want to leave everyone you come in contact with the impression of increase. If you just happen to be stopping by the water cooler, give the person that's there a compliment. But it's got to be sincere, merited praise. I'm not talking about flattery. That's pretty hollow and shallow. Do you know that everyone does something well? Start looking for what other people do well. Bring it to their attention. Let them know that you notice it. Give them an idea that inspires them. Leave every person you come in contact with the impression of increase. And if you see the best in other people, in other companies, in other situations and conditions and circumstance, you're going to be in a phenomenal vibration. You're just going to feel good all the time. Your whole world is going to improve. Bring that idea into your mind. Leave everyone you come in contact with the impression of increase. In other words, make them feel good because you have come in contact with them. It was one of the greatest rules that I've ever learned. The compensation that you get from developing that into your character is phenomenal. It goes beyond the scope of your imagination. If you want rich rewards, leave every person with the impression of increase. See, there is a science to getting rich, and I don't just mean money. I'm talking about all aspects of your life, an abundant life. We're dealing with an infinite source of supply. And the author of that book said, you do not get rich by doing certain things. You get rich by doing things in a certain way. Now think about that. You do not get rich by doing certain things. You get rich by doing things in a certain way. You see, you could find two people working in the same company for the same sales manager, and they're selling the same product in the same marketplace. One is doing very well, and the other's struggling, and yet they're both doing the same thing. Now, this has puzzled people for many years. What is the difference? Do you know what I have found? I have found that most of the huge corporations do not know what the real top producers are doing. And most of the top producers don't know what they're doing. They're what you call unconscious competence. You see, if corporations knew what the real hard chargers were doing, they would can it and give it to everybody. They don't know what they're doing. You do not get rich by doing certain things. Now, I can paraphrase that. You do not become a real pro in your field by doing certain things. You become a real pro in your field by doing things in a certain way. Think about Tiger Woods. Now, you may not be a great golfer. I'm not a great golfer. I've played a lot of golf, but it's just something that I do periodically. But I understand a bit about the game, and I understand this, that this guy is so far beyond everyone else in his field, there isn't any comparison, and everybody knows that. Do you know he's the best in the world, and yet he's changed his game twice to get better? There was no competition. But you see, Tiger Woods doesn't compete. He creates. When he goes out in that golf course, he's not competing against anybody else. He's competing against Tiger Woods. The science of getting rich, the science of being the best in your field, it's not by doing certain things, it's by doing things in a certain way. Now, if you're going to understand what the certain way it is, it's by law. There's laws that govern this whole universe. And you must understand these laws. And if you don't understand them, odds are pretty good nothing of any consequence is really going to happen, because it's going to happen on a hit and miss basis. Now, there's some people, I was one of them, that by some stroke, I don't know really how it happens, I don't know if we're guided or what it is, they just start doing things in a certain way, and they just keep getting better and better and better and better. But they're not able to articulate. They can't tell you why. School doesn't teach this. School does not teach the laws. They do not. School teaches us very little about ourselves. As a matter of fact, Dr. John Mike, who heads up the Montessori school in Fort Lauderdale, is a psychiatrist, and his wife Susan is a psychiatrist. He said that I taught him more about the mind in 1 year than he had learned in 4 years of medical school and 5 years of psychiatric training. Now, I always found that rather interesting, since I just shared with him what a good doctor had shared with me. See, I have learned some of the basics for really improving the quality of your life. That's what thinking into results is all about. It's about the basics. And one of the basics is that you do not become the best in your field by doing certain things. You become the best in your field by doing things in a certain way. You've got to be very calm and confident. You've got to know who you are. James Allen said, calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. It's the result of long and patient effort in self-control. That's one of the basic qualities of leadership, self-control. You've got to control yourself. Goethe, the German philosopher, psychologist, who really swayed the thinking of the entire Western world, he said, before you can do something, you first must be something. You've got to do things in a certain way. You've got to bring your mind into harmony with the laws that govern your being. You've got to understand that the thoughts that you think control your emotions. And your emotions control the vibration that your body's in, so it controls how you act. If you don't spend a respectable amount of time gaining an understanding of the relationship of the conscious to the subconscious to the body, you're dealing on a hit and miss basis. Life is very short. It can be an absolutely phenomenal trip, but it can also be a massive headache if we don't understand how to make things happen. The law says what you put out comes back. We just want to put the very best out. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. If you're going to win, you've got to be courageous. I quoted Earl Nightingale in a previous lesson where he said the opposite of courage is not cowardness, it's conformity. It's just going along with everybody else. Don't do what everybody else is doing. You're going to end up where they end up. Nowhere. Struggling to get by. You want to stand out like a beacon on a dark night. You want to make certain that you are one of the most effective human beings that you could ever be. Do things in a certain way. The one point that all great leaders have agreed on, I've quoted them 2 or 3 times, is that you and I become what we think about. It's not just the thoughts that we consciously entertain. We have all kinds of ridiculous, negative, aborted thoughts that come flying through our consciousness. That's not what we become. We become what thoughts we take and internalize. We get emotionally involved in. The thoughts that we let control us. How do we think about our company? How do we think about our job? Don't let everybody around you control how you think about the company. You think about great thoughts about this company. Understand this. When you talk to somebody, you're the company. You're the company. The company's people. Great companies develop great people. You develop great people. You're the people. You do not become the best at what you're doing by doing certain things. You become by doing these things in a certain way. And that certain way is all the way through thinking into results. Make it a part of your way of thinking. Make it a part of your way of life. And you will have a phenomenal life. Make up your mind that regardless of what you did in the past, you're going to do something phenomenal in the future. You see, I did this. You're not talking to somebody that's just read a book and sharing it with you. I had no formal education. I had no business experience. I had 2 months high school. I had a bad work record. And I was 26, and bang, like that, everything started to turn around because I started to study. Now, that was many years ago. but I've earned millions of dollars. I've built companies, not a company, companies that operate all over the world. And you know something? I don't even think what I've done is that great. It's nothing compared to what I'm going to do. If you really want to make it happen, you got to make it happen every day. When you wake up in the morning, make up your mind today you're going to do it better than you've ever done it before. You're going to do it in a certain way. The certain way is the best way. But you know something? There's always a better way. What's best today isn't best tomorrow. There's a better way. There's a better way of doing everything. Now, I want to leave you on this lesson with a law. It is an absolute law, and remember, I've said it before. A law is something that operates all the time with every person everywhere. This is the law of compensation. The law of compensation clearly states that the amount of money you earn is always going to be in exact ratio with the need for what you do, your ability to do it, and the difficulty there is in replacing you. Just 3 steps. The need for what you do, your ability to do it, and the difficulty there is in replacing you. Now ask yourself, is there a great need for what you do? I would say the answer to that is probably an unequivocal yes. There is great need. So that's there and you have nothing to do with it. If you just focus on the second step, you're going to become better at what you do. Every day you're going to perfect it just a little bit. Do you know something? You're going to be very difficult to replace. Now, there's no one that's indispensable. In fact, I read a poem one time. It says, it was called The Indispensable Person. It said, put your hand in a bucket of water, put it in up to the wrist, pull it out, and the hole that remains is just how much you'll be missed. You can splash all you want as you enter. You can stir up the water galore, but take it out in no time. It'll be much the same as before. The idea behind it was that there's no indispensable person, but there's some that are very difficult to replace. I mentioned Tiger Woods. Do you know he's paid millions of dollars just to show up at a golf tournament? He draws people like no other golfer can. He's the very best at what he does. Make up your mind, if you take care of the second point here, it's the need for what you do, your ability to do it, and the difficulty there is in replacing you. You make up your mind, you're going to become very good at what you do. You're going to give it everything you've got. You're going to do things, everything, in a certain way. You're going to become very difficult to replace. And you know something? When that happens, your stock goes up. And if where you're working doesn't recognize that, there will be somebody waiting at the door that'll always pay you more. The opportunity's always here. It's always here for the person who masters what they do. You do not get rich by doing certain things. You get rich by doing things in a certain way. It's a phenomenal concept. It's one that's guided my life for many, many years, and I've been richly rewarded. I live in a healthy body. I have friends on every continent, in almost every major city in the world. I earn all kinds of money. I have all kinds of fun. But you know something? Everything I do in a certain way. I have found, after close to 50 years, that I really don't know much about myself. And I'm excited to learn more. Because as I do, more of my world unfolds. You know, we're something like a flower that blooms. Imagine a rose for a moment. Do you know you can stand and stare at a rose, and it'll completely unfold before your eyes, and you'll never see a petal move. And if you try and force the unfoldment of that rose, you'll kill it. A rose is one of the most beautiful expressions of life. And you are without question one of the most magnificent expressions of life. And do everything in a certain way. You'll be compensated in a just way. It's Bob Proctor. Thank you.